Stress and panic. I mentioned before how important these are to the game. They create the psychological landscape that you play within. And this is going to concentrate properly on that. You can get at the stress and panic rules on the rulebook 103 plus. Counts as mounting tension and the different things that add to that and create it. And remember, your stress level lets you roll that many stress dice for every skill check you do. And any ones that come up on those stress dice, well, that is a panic. So that's how the stress works. But of course, the more dice you're rolling, the more chance you have of succeeding. So there's the good and there's the bad of stress. And that's kind of, it sounds right, yeah? It's adrenaline and it's all those other things. But, you know, adrenaline is fine to a point where you actually then get to calm down and recover. But if you're in a highly dangerous situation where you can't do those things, then, you know, longer term it's going to become psychological issues, which is what this kind of deals with when you're in situations potentially out of control. So your stress level will increase by 1 whenever you push a roll. In other words, you re-roll all the dice that are not 6s. You can re-roll the dice that were 1s on your base dice. That's just, you know, for you mutant players out there, you know, because if your stress dice were 1s, you wouldn't be talking about pushing anyway, you'd be going into panic. So anything that's not a success, you can re-roll to push, but you take a stress and you then take that extra stress die into account and roll it, and re-roll those stress dice as well with it. So obviously none of those stress dice, let's just say you had 2 stress and you did a skill check and you've rolled your 2 stress dice, and you want to push the roll, neither of those stress dice were 1s. Let's say you had no successes, you'd have to pick up your 2 stress dice plus 1 more because you've just earned a stress by pushing, and roll 3 stress dice plus the base dice from your skill, your stat, and your gear. Those 3 things are what give you your base dice. Very different to mutants' 3 dice layout there. So the stress dice is a completely separate thing, but you know, it lets you attempt to roll successes, which is why the stress dice has the face hugger on. It's there as a pretty good reminder that those ones are really bad ones. So yeah, stress, you push a skill roll, you fire at full auto burst, you suffer 1 or more points of damage. That's harsh, that's really harsh. You go without sleep, food or water. You perform a coup de grace, and of course you have to fail an empathy check to perform a coup de grace on a human. So this is an interesting one. A scientist in your team fails to use the analysis talent. Page 77. Okay, yep. I'm not experienced enough to know the implications of what that is actually suggesting there. I haven't read the analysis talent. I'm sure there's something awful there that implies. A member of your own crew attacks you. You know, this game's just got some really cheery optimism for how things are going to end up. You can just see it there, can't you? A person nearby is revealed to be an android. Well, that's going to be a shocker, isn't it? If they were hiding it. Or you encounter certain creatures or locations as determined by the scenario or the GM, where you'd say everybody gain 1 stress. It's like a no-brainer. So your stress is the amount of your stress dice. Easy peasy. So when you do roll a 1 on your stress dice, a face hugger symbol, well, you panic. So you make a panic roll, and you roll on this panic chart, which is on page 105. We have a nice chart here. You won't be able to see it properly, right? But essentially the results are that 1 to 6 is, you know, you're just keeping it in check, and then it goes from 7 up to 15 plus, So these are a cumulative stacking effect. So if you had like, you basically, you roll your d6 and you add your stress to it. So if you didn't have any stress, if you had like, I don't know, one stress, or something else happened to make you do a panic roll, because other things can happen, you know, as long as you didn't have many stress, the chances are nothing bad's going to happen. But from 7 onwards, stuff starts occurring. So you do that panic roll, and if for some reason you have to do a second panic roll after you've done the first one, then you know you'd apply the worst kind of one, and if you rolled the same one type thing, you'd stack the one you've got plus 1 result up, and that kind of philosophy. So stress dice make you roll on a panic roll, but also, and remember, when the stress dice comes up, you can't push. You would also panic roll if you witness a friendly character suffering from a certain panic effect on this table. So there's one that basically freaks everyone else out and makes them have to do a panic roll. You're pinned down by a ranged attack. So what that is it's one of the stunts that you can pull for extra 6s, extra successes, where you can say, I'm going to stunt 1 point to make this person be pinned down, and hey, there you have a panic roll. The GM doesn't necessarily make panic rolls for NPCs, except where the GM deems it. If they were spending a thing to do it, I'd probably let them do it. You suffer a critical injury. Remember, that's what happens if you hit 0 health. You're broken, as it's called there. So that's the only stat that gets damaged, essentially, off the top of my head. There's probably something there, but in this, we don't break the stats all round like in Mutant. We just break health pretty much, and then we roll for a critical injury, and that's a D66 chart. Getting worse the higher you get. Yeah, so you suffer a critical, you do a panic roll. You don't just gain a stress, you do a panic roll. Trying to differentiate between those things, it's like, these are the things where you gain a stress, okay. These are the things where you gain a panic roll. Those 2 lists there are kind of super important to be able to have on a GM screen. I hope the Game Mother screen has those on it. I have the GM screen, and I haven't actually looked at it properly yet, but from my experience of every single system I've ever played, their GM screens are sorely lacking. And I don't know if it was a case of they were designed by people that knew the rules too well because they designed them. It could well be that, couldn't it? Because, you know, as a player, I've looked at things and been like, yeah, that's an essential. Because as you might have seen from some of the Mutant videos, I made some of my own GM screens. Maybe we'll do one where we look at the GM screen. That could be cool, right? But that's kind of an essential idea, to be able to differentiate between those two, so you don't get mixed up and say, oh, apply a stress, whereas it should have been a panic roll, or vice versa. Another panic roll would be, you are attacked by a strange alien creature that you've never seen before. So, you know, it's face hugger jumps you and you've never seen one of these before. Everyone's going to do a panic roll. Or a truly horrifying event occurs as determined by a scenario or the GM. So again, you could say, everybody do a panic roll. So I suppose that would be some very, very serious happening. Like, I don't know, your ship has just crashed into a nearby moon, you know, or the planet you are on has just split and you've fallen down between the tectonic plates. I'd say that's worth a panic roll. Anyway, panic actions. Rolls of 10 or higher, you start getting these forced actions that you have to start taking. And of course it would cancel the skill. If you were trying to do a skill check of some sort, it would cancel it. Yeah, so the other idea is overkill. The overkill talent lets you replace the effect of a panic roll result of 11 or higher by the overkill effect, which is you get to go all psycho nuts instead of panicking on those really high end ones. Stopping panic, that's kind of an important thing here. We have got something in place here to stop panic, seeing as it's a pretty detrimental thing for group cohesion. And the ways we can stop panic, some effects are immediate or last one round, so okay. Others remain in effect, so some will auto-resolve. You'll be a bit weird for a moment and then you'll be fine a few seconds later. I'm like that all the time in these videos that I do. So until one of the following things happen. So either another character comes to your aid and makes a command roll. So this is really, really important. See page 71. This counts as a slow action when in combat. So command's going to be a pretty big deal, basically. You can stop panic if you're broken. So I guess you've got some other things to worry about. But then if you're broken, you probably are rolling a critical injury, which means you're probably rolling on the panic table. Yeah. Okay. Or one turn passes. Okay. So turn in this game is not a round, remember, and not a combat or your personal round. A turn is 5 to 10 minutes of time and kind of approximately 2 zones, a zone being a room or a corridor or something like that. Yeah, so basically you might be freaking out and running around for 5 to 10 minutes, and then you've worn yourself out and you're like, you better? It's like, yeah, I'm all right. I don't know what came over me. So relieving stress for every full turn, again the 5 to 10 minutes daily, spent resting in a safe area. Resting and safe areas. Two very important points. Secured from enemies, as far as you're aware. I'm always watching you with something. Your stress level gets to reduce by 1 point if you're resting in a safe area. So the same applies for health, of course. And just to quickly mention actually about the medical aid thing, so you don't get confused, medical aid as well as a skill use only works on broken people. Because you might think, oh, you just like heal, and it's not an MMORPG. You know, it's not like, it's not a computer game. You can heal someone that's broken or on the crit table sort of thing, but the you heal 1 health from resting, just like you do stress in a safe area. Rest, not exploring, not wandering around and just checking the room or whatever. You've got to be resting. Anyway, you relieve your stress that way automatically by chilling out for a while. Maybe let your teammates, go off and do it. Maybe let them split the party. And yeah, certain drugs and certain panic rolls can decrease stress as well. So, and once per act in cinematic play and once per game session in campaign play, you can interact with your signature item to reduce your stress level 1 step. So I guess that's just -1 stress. This typically requires a slow action. So your signature item is kind of, it's your personal thing that can ground you. So in the case of Newt from Aliens, it's the doll's head, whatever she was called. What was she, Nancy or something like that, or Daisy, or some sort of name like that, wasn't it? Yeah. And then some conditions, such as starving or freezing, can block your ability to relieve stress. That's important now. Now, if you've rolled a result of 13 or higher on a panic roll during a game session, at the end of the session you make an empathy roll. Just on the attribute, not on the not using any skill, of course, just the stat. If the roll succeeds, you develop a permanent mental trauma of some kind. Roll a d6 and consult the table on page 101. Incredible, isn't it? And you know, there's so many other things here just to stress a player, let alone the character, and all the hazards and conditions and the starving and the dehydration and the exhaustion and the rules for vacuum and the rules for freezing and falling and explosions and fire and disease and radiation and drowning and suffocation and the crazy stuff about all the other dangers in the world, and supply levels and air and power levels running out and just, yeah, that's really stressful. So that was stress. Of course, there's GM stress, trying to remember all this. Let's hope the GM screen is up to snuff, and I'll see you at the next one. Try not to stress. Don't have nightmares.